Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamlee. A funny thing happened while shopping at the mall. Usually that sounds like the opening line to a joke, but this was no laughing matter. It was a hurtful experience for a friend of mine, and judging from the feedback I've received from many of you, it happens more often than we think. The acronym is SWB, Shopping While Black, and we'll talk about it and other topics affecting the African American community. Roger Chesley, Bill Thomas, and Wil LaVeist are here. Stay tuned. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamlee. We have lots to talk about today with the Another View Roundtable. But first, let me remind you that this coming Sunday, February 15th, is the deadline to sign up for health care insurance as part of the Affordable Care Act. Our Lisa Godley had a chat with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Sylvia Burwell, who shares this advice.
Almost 330,000 Virginians have already taken advantage of the Affordable Care Act and now have health care. If you don't have coverage and are still on the fence about signing up, Health and Human Services Secretary Sylvia Burwell explains why you should.
You should do it because it's about your own financial security and your own health security. So for 80% of folks that were in the marketplace last year, and these are individuals with families, it will be more, but you could get coverage for $100 or less after you add in that tax credit. So that gives you, I think, a sense of the affordability.
If you're concerned about what physicians may or may not be in a network or what treatments a particular plan covers, everyone is encouraged to do your research.
I would suggest that what people do, you actually can shop and find out if your providers are in the network of the different plans. And many people are shopping based on price of deductible, price of premium, and the benefit package, as well as the providers included.
Secretary Burwell says she can't stress enough the importance of having health care and pointed to several examples of people who've benefited after they signed up.
Whether it was the young woman I met who was in her mid-20s, and her mother kept telling her, sign up, and she said, I work out every day. I'm healthy as can be. But her mother told her, and she did sign up. Right after the beginning of the year, she had stomach problems, had to go to the emergency room, and found out she had stomach cancer. And fortunately, when I met her, she was still in her chemo, but doing very well, and the prognosis was good. Met another gentleman who got coverage, and he never had a colonoscopy, but, it's part of the preventive care with no copay. Didn't have colon cancer in his family. He had colon cancer, caught it, and now he is on his way to recovery, and they caught it at a very early stage. Or the young man, he's 23, and this is the opposite of the mom story. He signed his whole family up, and that's because they're small business people, and they'd never had coverage. And so he went on, got his whole family covered, signed them up, and then what happened to him was 4 months later, his appendix burst, and he went in, and it was all paid for. And so for him being that young, not having that financial burden. So it's both about the finances, it's about the prevention, it's about the health. And you hear the stories every day.
Again, the deadline to sign up is this Sunday, February 15th. If you want to speak directly to someone, call 1-800-318-2596. And if you want in-person assistance, go to localhelp.healthcare.gov. Put in your zip code, and it will direct you to where you can go to meet someone you can speak with face-to-face. Or if you know what you're looking for, just log on to healthcare.gov. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And if you need coverage and you want to go somewhere here in Hampton Roads, Celebrate Healthcare is holding several sessions over this weekend. Today, they are at Bryant and Stratton in Hampton Roads, in Hampton Peninsula Town Center from 11 to 5. And tomorrow and Sunday from 10 until 4 at the Hampton Roads Convention Center. Anyone from Hampton Roads can go, sit down, talk with counselors, learn how to sign up. protect yourself. It's really important. And now to our roundtable. Roger Chesley is a columnist for the Virginian Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hello, Barbara.
How you doing?
Early Valentine's Day.
Thank you so much. Bill Thomas is our community activist and all-around stirrer of the pot. Hey, Bill. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. It's Valentine's Day.
Okay, you might want to put your mic down so people can hear you.
That's better. I am wonderful, and it's Valentine's Day, so it'll be good.
Thank you very much. And Wil LaVeist is here. He's an author, journalist, and talk show host. How you doing?
How you doing, Barbara? And every day is Valentine's Day.
Oh, listen to Barry White over there. Political science professor Carol Pretlow unfortunately could not join us today, so she said, fellas, carry on in her absence. So, want to jump right into this. Norfolk Public Schools had to give back $1.6 million from Title I grants because grant dollars were not spent. We have Dr. Samuel King on the line who wants to talk to us a little bit about what's going on. Hey, Dr. King, how you doing? Dr. King? Hello?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Okay, how are you? Thank you so much for carving out some time to chat with us. So, this is obviously a problem. You met with the school board on Tuesday night. Is there a plan in terms of how, one, to prevent this from happening again, and two, how are you going to pay the money back?
Absolutely. Well, let me begin by hopefully providing some additional clarity to this whole process. I think we all know that our school division generates Title I funds based on the percentage or proportion of our students that qualify for free or reduced lunch. Mm-hmm. And so that is of extreme importance. I mean, each child is important, but when you center on the fact that we're looking at approximately 67 to 70% of the student population that qualifies for free or reduced lunch, then it also is obvious that you would receive in the division a certain percentage or a certain amount of funds to support the needs of those students. And so that in itself represents the importance of this item in our strategic plan. And so I think it's also important to note how these funds could be used and how these funds have been used. And I'll just quickly mention that.
Okay.
To provide additional staff to support students that are Title I students, to support professional development and professional learning for teachers and staff to meet the needs of the students, the Title I students. It can also go for an initiative to center on additional parent involvement and engagement to enhance that for this student population and for these families. Lastly, I'll just mention, extended learning times are important for everyone, but definitely important for Title I students because many times we find that there are additional needs and gaps, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So as you think about the dollar and cents amount, as of July 1 of 2012, up until this year, up until 2014, of course, the system would have earned a certain amount of money, and these monies come in different cycles. The first cycle was between July 1, 2012 to September 2014, and during that time, we were allocated funds. We spent $14.6 million, but had access to 15.3. And so, that's approximately 96% of the funds that we spent. However, we had additional funds as we dig deeper that could have been used for some of the same purposes that I just mentioned. But I also mentioned that you have to make strategic decisions around the utilization of the funds because they are there to supplement and not supplant, which means that as you spend these dollars, we must be vigilant in terms of ensuring that anything we use these funds around or for cannot be a repeat of how other initiatives are being, the same initiatives cannot be already utilized in non-title schools. And so some strategic decisions have to be made there. And quickly, the next range of funding period that comes into play for this item of concern for me is it spans from July 2013 through a period of September 2015. So that range is still open. However, from July 2013 up until September 30th of 2014, we needed to spend 85% of that allotted amount. And the allotted amount, that 85%, would have been $11.5 million that should have been spent during that time. We actually spent $10.5 million during that time.
So you missed it by $1 million. But, we don't have a lot of time, Dr. King, and I know you want to get to what then are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Okay. That's the internal controls that have been provided to the board, and also an additional adjustment in terms of an action plan provided to the board. One of those consists of working to ensure that these funds, 100% of these funds, are utilized. And one action step is to secure a position to serve the school division's needs in the form of a senior coordinator for title programs. I did a reorg that allowed us to secure an open position for that, and that position has been posted. It has not been hired as of yet, but it has been posted. So that's one action step. A second action step that we're in the midst of is it consists of further reassignment of pertinent positions to the Business and Finance Department, because I consider this a programmatic issue as well as a personnel issue. So, of course, appropriate personnel actions are being taken, and of course, when you get into those, that gets into confidentiality. But absolutely, accountability is important, and so I must ensure that the necessary personnel steps are taken with that, in addition to reassignments and modifications along that line. Also, another action step centers on presenting proposed Title I budgets to the superintendent's cabinet early, because that window opens July 1. And once you submit your Title I application, X amount of time will pass at the state level for state review to approve that document. And so the sooner you can have that Title I plan for your division approved, the sooner the monies can flow to benefit these children. And so if that window is too wide in terms of approval, then it shortens the window of time that schools have to spend money. So, and the last two action steps center on also presenting to the board, at least my board, at least quarterly, a report that indicates where schools are with spending dollars, and more importantly, in the aggregate, where the system is in terms of what we project should have been spent, so that when there's a gap along that line, then real-time adjustments can be made. And so some pretty strategic internal things moving forward in terms of the action plan, as well as two things, as I mentioned earlier, programmatic as well as personnel kinds of issues. Dr. King, let me ask you this real quick. We got about 30 seconds left, and that is, as parents and really the community looks at the fact that, Norfolk has been struggling, we know that, in terms of our kids and their success in schools, and what kind of guarantee can you make to them that in the future people are going to utilize the monies that we have available so that our students can learn?
Well, the guarantee centers on the accountability. And so with the adjustment that's made, there, because there's so many layers that are being added with the action plan, so transparency means accountability. And what I mean by that is when those reports are before us from a formative standpoint, before the cabinet, then it's clear as to how much money has already been encumbered from a formative standpoint, because these monies are spent across a period of several years. And so with these reports being made routinely, and now also including the Business and Finance Department in terms of the bottom line crunching of the dollars and cents amount, then we will know early whether we're on target or not. And if we're not on target, then I have a mechanism in place where we can shift gears in a timely manner to ensure that those monies are spent for children. So that's my guarantee. That guarantee really hinges upon the action plan that has been developed, that it is now becoming a part of our current strategic plan. So that's my guarantee to parents and students around the importance of this. And I think this is very serious, and changes have to be made in reference to this.
Okay, and so you're going to make sure that moving forward, the money will be spent in a timely fashion. I know that you have to go. Our roundtable would love to talk to you, but I understand that your time won't permit that. But we're going to continue this conversation, and we appreciate hearing from you so that we know what your plans are in terms of this issue. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. King.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All righty, take care.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, roundtable. Roger, I'll start with you.
Oh, sure. It's unforgivable. I said that in the column that ran yesterday. Had it not been for the pushing and the work of my colleague, Sharice Newsom, who really was just doing a routine, what are the audits saying about different programs with the division, started to realize there's something amiss with some of these Title I funds. Now, this is not a new program. The grant program is not a new program. This is money that should be spent. This is money that goes, to help teach our poorest, students in the division. The Norfolk division is overwhelmingly black. It's about 61% black. It's about 7.3% Hispanic. So that we know that this is a lot of money that is going to help students who look like us. It's unforgivable that this happened. I know the superintendent made some comments to the effect of, well, we spent about 96%. This is money that you don't have to do anything to get. It's based on the poverty, the income levels of the students in your division. So that's not good enough. And there's another problem that's been cropping up again and again. The school board didn't know about this until last Friday. One board member told me this, that they probably would not have learned about this problem unless they knew that, unless the stories, which the division then realized was in the works, had come out. And that's not the first time that there's been a transparency problem between the division to the school board and the greater community.
Well, and I wish Dr. King would have been able to stay on with us, because my other question then is, the audit, though, your reporter found it through reading the audit, the audit for the year. I mean, everybody has access to that, and I know that that's presented to the school board as well as to the school division itself. So there was opportunity, apparently.
Well, there was opportunity for the division to come clean with the school board, which did not take place before last Friday.
Bill, I saw you shaking your head the whole time.
Oh, I met Dr. King, and I think he's trying to do a yeoman's job, and he can't carry all the buckets. I think I had a chance to talk to him for an hour. We were talking about some programs, university partnerships, and some things like this. But this is a fundamental problem that we find in some urban schoolhouses and some HBCUs. The board is not, some board members are just flat out not qualified. Each board would have an audit committee, and every quarter that board should look at those committees. I served on an audit committee for years on a board, and I'd make special care with the background, knowing that once you get a red flag, and your accounting system should set that up, of unencumbered funds, then you should encumber those funds before they get deobligated. Mm-hmm. It's simple. That's basic 1, 2, 3 arithmetic. And the board members have got to understand that these are our tax dollars for our children. And mistakes do happen. They do happen, but this mistake happened, and it appears that there's still some kind of misconception of the fiscal year ending for the government versus the end of year ending, that they appear to not being planned. You have a planned spending amount, mm-hmm. and then you have an actual. Mm-hmm. And then you look at those and you review those with management. We look at it, I look at it every day and look and see what unencumbered funds that we have, because the government will take it back. It's called deobligating those funds.
Right, because they're actually going to disperse those funds now to school divisions all throughout Virginia, right. and so we pretty much lost that money. And
sadly, and I think Dr. King's a good man, but what is going to really happen is the schools that spend the money, that's where they're going to send the money to. Mm-hmm. They're going to look down the record and see who is spending the money, who's utilizing the best, and those funds will be utilized by another school system.
Well,
I thought I saw in the news reports that it said that there was an alert or information was provided
from the business department
well in advance that this was the case. Yeah. So I didn't hear any explanation regarding that.
What do you think about the plan overall? The plan that he has laid out in terms of making sure this doesn't happen again. Let me start with Will, since you were already talking, and I'll come to you. Any opinion? I
think from what he said, it sounds fine, but I don't know exactly what his internal situation is to be able to ascertain, to be able to assess it, whether it's actually going to work. I think that what it does say, for those who say we need money to improve education, we need money to improve education. This is a hard sell. It's a terrible sell.
Roger.
Okay. Well, one, I would like to have a better idea of how top-heavy the administration is right now. Why can't it be done within the existing framework? Why do they have to hire a new person just to focus on Title I? So I'm not too sure about that. But secondly, think about what this message sends to the city council, which has to sign off on the school division budget. Yeah. There was a story we had following that Tuesday meeting where the superintendent was going to present some issues to the city council about, hey, can we have additional funding? You know what the answer is going to come back from the city council. You can't spend the money that the federal government gives you for this specific program. So why should we give you extra? You haven't proved that you're going to be good stewards of the money that we give you out of the overall budget.
But all that being said, again, I think he's a good man. I met him and his chief of staff. We spent a good hour or two talking about educational programs. But rather than to keep mulling over this, we would be willing, and I would be willing, to find some people, put them together who has experience. I have over 16 years experience in boards. You need somebody to look at this from the outside, and even before you hire somebody else, to see what can be done. There are red flags. You get a flag every month that this money is unencumbered and it's going to be taken if you don't spend it. So I think they need to look at that. I think he needs to reach out to the community, and like I said, I would be more than willing to get some folks that I know are retired to just get an external review to help him, because he can't carry everything. He can't be responsible for everything. He's got the educational piece that he needs to deal with. But rather than burning this bridge down, why don't we try to build it back up and see how the community can come back with some outreach?
And I also think that he said something about being unable to duplicate programs that are already going on. There are plenty of people out here who have great ideas that can add to the mix of what they already have. You've got a wealth of education and information sitting right here that can help if they're looking for other people to bring other programs to the table.
No, but what he's saying is that they submitted a plan to the U.S. government. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. You can't change that plan to do something else that's already being done within the school system. So you have to do what you said you were going to do. Otherwise, you got to get an exception to do something different if you have to hurry up and spend the money. So he could have used the money for something else, but since it wasn't in the plan, he couldn't use it for those purposes.
Last comment on this, right?
And, I'm not going to suggest that he's not a good person, as Bill has brought up, but my point is, this falls directly back to the superintendent. There might have been some problems within his administration getting this spent, but the buck has to stop with him. And, it's a black mark on him. It really is.
Well, let's help him.
In full disclosure, I am the chair of the Norfolk Education Foundation, so I just want people to know that, because I do have a connection from there. We do spend our many grants, and we do spend the money that we are given in order to help the teachers in the classroom.
As I said, there's a wealth of information.
Absolutely. Along that same vein, South Carolina State, which is the only HBCU, state public HBCU in South Carolina. And they're talking about closing it for 2 years because, again, of fiscal mismanagement. What is the deal? I mean, is that the legacy of HBCUs, this whole fiscal mismanagement thing, Will?
Well, I would hope not, because as we talked about before on a previous show, there's a lot of schools that have fiscal issues and mismanagement problems. So to just imply that it's only happening to HBCUs is troubling. And I would have to look at South Carolina and look at their entire school system and schools and where they're positioned and what their status is, and to ask them, okay, why are you only focusing on this particular school. Is this the only school within the entire state system that is having difficulties? Why? And then HBCUs represent, what is it, somewhere around 3% of all of the universities and throughout the, I mean, we're not talking about a large pool of schools when you look at the breadth of schools that are across the country.
That is true. It just kind of struck me as, this being the only public HBCU, and you normally don't see public universities shut down.
Yeah, and it is indeed disturbing. Now, the news articles that I've read since this came out earlier this week suggest that it got through one chamber, but it's not going to get through, I believe, the state Senate in South Carolina. However, there obviously is something going on with the financial picture at South Carolina State, and it speaks to, obviously, problems there. But I think the larger issue is, again, at one time, HBCUs, if you were black, you had to go to HBCUs. You don't have that. There are more options for African-American students now, and a lot of them are not doing what their parents did.
Yeah, because they did say that the low enrollment was a problem.
And I think that is a big issue for a lot of the HBCUs. They have not been able to adapt to a model that gave them a ready pool of students every year. And, so much of the budgets at all these schools are based on what the enrollment is. And, this is, I think, a story that's going to be played out again and again. And obviously alumni have to do work, but we also have to take a look at there are probably going to be several of these universities that don't exist in a few years.
There are some very good HBCUs. There are some very good primarily white institutions. There are some that are average. There are some that are very bad. As I've said 1,000 times, I guess, on this program, universities in today's economy cannot be enrollment driven. If you're enrollment driven, you got a problem with the economy and every other ups and hiccups that you can come along with. The biggest problem is the pipeline of kids that are African American. There is sufficient folks out there. They're just not college educatable. And they're not going to these schools because the schools now are turning them down because what President Obama is doing. He's getting ready to set up what he's doing is right, I believe in this in some cases, but I think it's wrong because it's without a little notice. They're going to start putting up meters where you have to get to certain levels of graduation rate, retention rates, and all those kinds of things to get money from the federal government. Then there was the pressure. I bet 98% of South Carolina State University students are Pell Grant. That got cut, $500 million. Then you had the Student Plus loans. That got cut, another $500 million. So even the kids that are in shape of these Pell Grant students, they don't have the money. And then you have these large school systems like Norfolk and Portsmouth and Richmond that are only graduating 8 and 9 and 10% African-American kids with grades that can get into college. So it's a huge problem.
Well, one of the things that they said, too, about the students at South Carolina State was the average SAT was 820.
They shouldn't even be there. They should be
so that's a problem because the students won't be able to go to any of the other state schools unless they can meet the criteria.
Well, we should be careful about, the SAT as the only.
I agree, as the only, but it's a major.
Right, it is very much a major indicator, but let's not make that the only.
The only reason,
I say that because I see Bill's response over here, and he's at a university where at Hampton University, you have to achieve a certain benchmark, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not college ready or college educatable.
The reason I brought that up was because they were saying that if the students qualify, and one of the qualifications, is to have an SAT higher than that. If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable, Roger Chesley with the Virginian Pilot, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. I want to move on to a topic.
Can I just make one more point on this just to make sure?
Okay, all right.
If 20% of your kids are getting 800 and below, that would probably be okay. If 90% are getting 800 and lower, that's a problem. Yeah. That's a problem.
Right, and I would agree with him. Yeah. And then but it speaks to what has already been said here, that there's a changing landscape, and these schools because all of the schools are being forced to adjust to the changing landscape. So if a lot of your students are coming in with those types of SAT scores, you need to adjust what you are doing so that they can become successful and stay in your schools.
That's not the role that's not a role of a college or university. High schools are prepare kids to go to college, not college.
But I just said SAT score is not the only indicator.
Yeah, well,
it's not the only indicator.
It's a good one.
Okay, let me move on to a topic that apparently has stirred up a lot of controversy and a lot of comments. This past weekend, I had a friend in town from out of town who'd never been to Norfolk, and so we kind of did the tour and talked about what was going on in the city, and then we went to the mall in Norfolk, and she experienced shopping while black at a store there. Now, the only reason I'm not mentioning the store in the air is because we don't have the opposite side.
Right.
So, but she was the only person of color in the store at the time, and at one point says that the salespeople literally walked around her to get to other people who were coming into the store. And so after 10 minutes, someone finally recognized her and she brought up, what had happened. Now, I posted some things on Facebook on my personal page, and the reactions I got were pretty much in two camps. One was customer training, and one was a racial issue. So, and it was running about 50-50 for a while, and then it kind of started swinging more towards the race side. I'm just curious as to, A, have any of you experienced something like that? And B, is it simply customer service, or is it customer service depending on who the customer is?
I'm not sure that, were you with her, Barbara?
I was right outside the door. She was inside the store.
Well, the problem I used to have, and especially when I was in my 20s, was people following me while I was in the store, concerned about whether I was there to steal. So that was more the issue, not the point that I wasn't being waited on. It was usually I didn't need your help, but you were worried.
But you were right there.
You were worried that I might be getting ready to shoplift, and I've never done anything like that. And quite frankly, if that's the treatment I get, I usually don't go back to that particular store. I don't know. I mean, it's so different now just in general. There's usually fewer people to wait on you when you go into most stores. Usually you have folks only at the register and maybe one person walking the floor in a lot of stores.
Well, actually, the salesperson said to her, "We're short-staffed." But her perspective now, I understand you may be short-staffed, but I saw other people walk in after me, and you went directly to them and ignored the fact that I was standing in the store.
Well,
I mean,
that seems like that's neglect for whatever reason, and again, that's very disturbing, I think.
Well,
it's happened to me when I was, again, like Roger said, when I was younger, that would happen.
Nobody follows you around now?
No, I mean, but what I have noticed, and actually sometimes, I actually use it to my advantage, when I really want to go to a store and I just want to look around and not really be bothered, I will actually dress in a way maybe like I'm coming from working out or something like that. I'll dress in that way. And I will, 9 out of 10 times, I will be left alone. If I come in there with a suit on, if I come in there business casual like I am now, usually
nobody will bother you. Nobody will ask you, "Can I help you?"
Well, when I come in like this, they'll ask me. But if I come in, like I'm coming from the gym or something like that, I usually do get bothered, and I'll do it purposely if I don't really want to be bothered. And I think it does come down to customer service, because when someone walks in the door, you should at least get an acknowledgement of, hello, welcome to the store. And that's really all a person, needs.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I'm curious to hear from our listeners. Is it customer service, or is it customer service depending on who the customer is? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Bill, what do you think?
I can't make a comment. I mean,
you don't shop?
No, I do shop. I do shop, and I don't take discourteous service as something that I deal with personally. I am very demanding the customer, and I know the stores that do this, and everybody pretty much know that ones that do it. And I don't go to them. I shop online. I avoid it. I do not do that. You know what you do, and I know those high-end stores we see our folks going to and other folks as well, and they treat you like crap, and we still continue to go. I think the whole center. I haven't stepped in that. I won't even go there. I will not go it. I just won't do it. Just like after Greek Fest, I had very difficult times going to Virginia Beach. Very difficult times. I just remember what happened, and I know that some people say, well, let past be past. No.
People who were writing in, and I'll come right to you, Roger, were saying, that there needs to be more training and so forth. But the other school of thought was money is money, green is green, and that should be really the only color that matters.
Well, and I agree with you there, but the treatment I've generally been given when I go into stores, if it appears that I need help and that there's somebody available, I'm usually helped. And I ask for it, and I wonder how long your friend...
She stood there for about 10 minutes.
Well, I wonder
because she knew.
Well, I wonder if...
Okay, go ahead.
Because I sometimes give stores nowadays the benefit of the doubt and the actual salespersons there, because I know most of these stores... They are trying to keep their labor costs down, and they generally do not have a lot of people to help you when you shop in a lot of stores. But that has not been my experience. What your friend experienced, that has not been what I've generally experienced here in the region.
Heather joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Heather. You're on the air.
Yes, my comment is I do think many of us are prejudged when we walk into certain shops. My two experiences, I was expecting both times, my children. I was wearing comfortable clothes, a baby blue, like sweatpants, sweatshirt. I wasn't highly coiffed. I didn't have any jewelry on. One was in North Carolina, one was in Virginia Beach. High-end shop. I walked in, and no one paid attention to me. No one. And I was there for a good 15 minutes. I didn't even have the courtesy of someone coming up, as your friend did, saying, we're short of staff. There's definitely a prejudgment in who gets served and who doesn't, whether it's racial could be an element. It could also be class.
So class, because people assume because you had on your baby blue that you didn't have the money to pay for.
Absolutely. See, I got that's my confirmation.
I did, and I do not go to that high-end shop for that. I have gone in dressed to the nines as if going to the opera and couldn't beat the people off. But I didn't.
There you go.
But I did not pay a penny to them.
Absolutely.
I was courteous, but I knew what I was up against. And it's a snob thing, it's a class thing, and it also can be a race thing. I will not discount that.
Okay. Thanks so much for your call, Heather. We appreciate it. Jean joins us from Chesapeake. Is it Jean or Janine?
It's Janine.
Janine, hi.
Hello. I find this very interesting, and I found myself nodding my head when the gentleman said when he comes from the gym and he makes so that he doesn't get the customer service he may want, as opposed to when he's dressed up. And another factor that I have to take into consideration is how young I look. So when I walk into certain stores, I know that they're going to not give me the attention I deserve because they're thinking I'm a teenager who's walking into the store. But I like to have fun with that. If someone does come up to me and, gives me the correct customer service, then I'll spend as much as I can at that store to make the other girls look stupid, or whoever it is that decided not to help. But I have noticed that it's a lot. For me, when I go to the mall, it's based on how you're dressed. I have not had a race experience. Not to say that, of course, that they don't happen, but mostly for me, it's been how I look. And then with me and my daughter, they're thinking, look at these two little girls in the store. They're not going to spend any money, depending on where you go. So that has been my experience with it. And just depending with your friend, when you said that she said they deliberately went around to greet other people, that seems to me like it may have been a race thing as opposed to poor customer service.
As opposed to poor customer service and as opposed to being dressed down. Although it's very interesting because on Saturday, we were casual dressed. It wasn't, it was jeans and a nice shirt and, and so forth. Just like if you looked across the mall, everybody else, apparently, because it was a Saturday afternoon. Thanks so much, Janine, for your call. We really appreciate that. Let's take Michael in Portsmouth. Hi, Michael. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm calling regarding a situation I encountered when I was at a a high-end department store around the holidays, and it was really kind of piggybacking on what the lady before me was talking about. I was dressed down as well, in sweats and whatnot, because I was making my rounds before a certain hour so I can hurry up and get home before it got dark, because it gets dark early in the winter. However, when I entered the store, before I can get in the door good, I was approached by this African-American female who wanted to know, she might as well say, what are you doing here? Because I was asked, well, how can I help you? And she wasn't, so I'm looking for men's fragrances, which was the other end of a huge department store, but I was intercepted. That's the way I felt. It was as if they're trained to intercept a certain person of color or whatever. But that's what I felt, the interception of, well, what are you doing here? What do you want? How can I help you?
Did
Lady,
you?
Go ahead.
So it was more in the tone of voice. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was the tone and the approach. And like I said, it was like a trained thing to me. That's the first thing I picked up, because I've worked in sales as well.
Oh, very interesting.
You shouldn't do that. And I found the place, but I had to go all the way. So I'm asking myself, well, do you work there? I mean, do you work in fragrances? Because you don't even know what I'm here for.
Wow. Okay, Michael, let's get a reaction from our panel. We appreciate your phone call. Will, I see you nodding as you were listening.
Yeah, I mean, because
to Michael.
Again, and some of it again, and it may be, an interesting topic for you to have on the show, to have people who are in the retail business, because a lot of things that people don't know is that, okay, one, they deal with a lot of theft, and two, when they see someone who's stealing something, it's not like they can run after you and stop you.
Yeah.
We've seen cases where security and people have tried to stop people from robbing something, and they themselves have gotten in trouble. So I can see this potentially being in the training that, hey, if you can avoid some of this up front, then maybe. But I like what the callers have said, that yes, it's definitely, there's a race element. You see it's a class element. I shared with you how I recognize it's going on. I use it to my advantage. That's not condoning it, but it definitely does happen.
Barry joins us from Elizabeth City, and I'll come back to you, Roger. Go ahead, Barry, you're on the air.
Yes, I'd like to give one here, which was called Just Results, and a little poetic justice regarding snooty salespeople. Many years ago, back when I was still on active duty submarine service, a very good shipmate, uncle passed away and left him with an inheritance that, by today's standards, would almost be a millionaire. Anyways, we went to a very exclusive car dealership in London, England, and he was looking to buy a car. Now, number one, here he was, wearing his dress blues and all finery, and also being the fact that he was black, and then with a few of his other Navy friends, they weren't even going to acknowledge him until he asked what they had available, and they said, "Do you think you can afford it?" He says, "Well, it depends." He said, "I could pay cash right here and now for it." And the whole matter changed, because that's what he did. But all of a sudden, what else could we do for you, sir? And I just thought that, there you go. And it was poetic justice, whatever you could ask for.
Absolutely, Barry. Thanks for sharing that question. It just reminds me of a friend of mine who went into a high-end car dealership, and they would not even come up to him. So he went to the competition and bought a car and brought it back to the first dealership to say, this is what you missed. And he spent a lot of money. So, it's all about...
Yeah, it's all about the green.
He just reminded me of something. I remember when I came back, I was recruited to come back to Norfolk to the Virginian Pilot, and I was running editing Mix magazine. And I remember writing a piece because I went into a local haberdashery, and again, I wasn't dressed. And when I came in, the guy, he basically treated me and was telling me that I was essentially a bum. And I remember writing that piece. I just essentially the way that he treated me and said it, and I'm thinking, I came into your store. You really don't know what my wallet can and cannot do. And then obviously, if I'm coming into your store, and I very well could have, I had the resources. That's why I was there.
Well, but have any of you as males ever experienced someone coming up to you in the store to ask you to help them? Because they just automatically assumed that you worked at the store. Sharif joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Sharif. You're in the air.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah, I think I want to reiterate the point the last caller made is, it does come down to the money. I've worked in sales myself, and I think other salespeople are trained this way. They're looking for a potential customer. So somebody walks in the door and they look like they don't have money or they do have money. That affects their decision-making process on who they approach.
Wow.
Looking for a potential sale.
Very interesting. Thanks so much for sharing that, Sharif. Bill?
Just poor training. I mean, it's mostly today, unfortunately, our youth, especially the ones in the counter, are very rude and ill-mannered, and it's just a sense of how things are. I like to go to stores with self-service at Kroger's or wherever I go.
We don't mention store names.
Well, whatever store you go to. I'm just saying the ones that have it. But I'm very income inclined, but
income inclined.
That is correct. So in
terms of you
go where you know you will be treated with dignity and respect. And those that don't do it, like the store you're mentioning to, you leave them alone.
Yeah. And I do think there might be salespersons who they might have stereotypes about what a way a certain person is dressed or what language they're using and whether they have income. Right. But that can be dangerous because, a lot of times folks like to dress down, and a lot of times folks who might have a lot of money might have decided we're not going to dress it up today.
One of our interns worked at a store once, and during the customer training was told specifically to follow young African-American girls if they came into the store.
Wow. But
not to follow anyone else. So to me, that's some really poor customer training. That's kind of dangerous. Yeah. Let's see. Do we have any other calls to take? If not, I want to move up one more. Yes, no, Lisa? Okay. Let's move on. I want to get to one other topic real quickly, and that is black television. Have you noticed Scandal, Blackish, How to Get Away with Murder?
Empire.
All those on ABC, Empire on Fox. Here's the question. Is it the responsibility of these shows to build and repair urban society, or is it just entertainment? In other words, you understand what I'm saying? Because every time we get a chance to be in the mainstream, there's always this pull and push on whether or not, you have to represent the black community in a certain way. Well, is it just entertainment?
Well, it is entertainment, but you would hope that there would be enough of a variety on the air that not every single show has to feel like it has to present the dream or the best image of everything about African Americans, about Latinos, and I think what has been the problem in past years is there have been so few shows involving us in them that we kind of heap too many expectations on each individual show, and that's a lot for the people behind the shows to have to deal with. The problems, up to recently has been there's just been such a reluctance, almost a dismissiveness of putting us as the lead actor or actresses in roles on TV.
As a matter of fact, the network said at one point that it to have more than one African American either lead or show on your network was death.
Which
is
crazy.
What people would watch.
Yeah, I think a lot of the network people who greenlight these things just a lot of times I don't even think they're looking at data or they're looking at history. They're just going on their own perceptions. Because I'm remembering the old UPN network when it came on. And I think that was before. I think that may be what Fox is now.
Yeah.
But I remember all of those shows. So many of their shows when they began were black-oriented shows, and that's how they got their numbers up. So this formula is not new. To have a lot of shows representing different diversity. That's not a new thing. That America has shown that it would like that kind of content. And to Roger's point about variety, I think what you're seeing now is that kind of variety that people have been asking for. And I think that ultimately the responsibility to your question is on us, the viewers. If you don't like a show, don't watch it. They will shut it down because at the end of the day, it's about the green. So it'll get shut down.
And I think it's also important to say it publicly. Don't keep it to yourself. Say, well, I like this show because this is what it does, or I'm disgusted with this particular show because of the images that are put out there. It's been interesting seeing some of the stories that have come out about Empire, a show I enjoy seeing because of the twists and turns are in it and the like, and how some individuals don't like it, but it's gotten a lot of buzz, and it seems like it's doing well so far in the ratings in the first few weeks of the show.
We got like less than 2 minutes left, but do you find it interesting if you look at the Cosby Show, which was about upper class African Americans, and Blackish, the difference in the way that they experience being upper middle class African Americans? Do you find that a little ironic?
Well, I think what's interesting to me about Blackish is it's taking on that issue head on. The Cosby Show, it just assumed, okay, we're not going to really talk about it, but we're just going to show the image of a family with a doctor, with a lawyer, with kids who are doing well. Whereas the whole kind of premise of Blackish is, how do I keep my children connected to some of the things that I experienced growing up? And I think it's the same issue for a lot of people of our generation with our own children. So I just like the interplay and the comedy that comes from that.
From that, Bill, got anything to say real quick?
No, I didn't see Cosby as that. I lived in neighborhoods where people were doctors and they're pharmacists and nurses and principals and educators. So I didn't see it that way. I just think we watch too much TV. But it's solely for entertainment, money making purposes. They could care a hoot about bringing up some social issue if it can't sell.
All right, and with that, gentlemen, we are just about out of time. I want to wish each of you a very happy Valentine's Day. It's really been really sweet to have the fellas.
We do miss Carol.
We do miss Carol.
I do miss that extra beauty up in here.
I hope somebody is missing me. I have to.
Oh, we do miss you always.
No,
Bill.
not you. I mean somebody else.
And we will be right
There's
back.
not anybody in this room, I'm telling you that.
Well, you never know. You never know.
Hello, I'm Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation, and you're listening to Another View on WHRV 89.5 FM.
That was Al Sharpton. Yes, it was. Listen, before we go today, I want to say a very special happy birthday to the daughter of our producer, Lisa Godley. Jordan Yowell is sweet 16 today.
Oh,
so on behalf of
birthday.
the Another View family, we welcome you. We just say happy birthday to you, Jordan. We appreciate that. And next week, we're going to have a conversation, right, I hope, with the new chancellor of Elizabeth City State University, Dr. Stacey Franklin Jones. We'll talk about her plans for the growth of that school. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Kamaria Mason answered our phones. Take the time to share your appreciation with the one you love this Valentine's Day. And remember, it's the small things from the heart that mean the most. Thanks for joining us, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.